Article 3. So I know you don't yet have the special town meeting warrant because it needs to be a certain number of days before May 20th. But the Article 39 is an amendment to the zoning bylaw. Article 3 is a fairly similar amendment to the general bylaw. So back in November, the FCC, let me actually go. So I'm just going to give you a history, and then I'm going to go back. So, back in the fall, the FCC enacted some federal regulations that went into effect July 14th. But in essence, a lot of the design and other regulations actually went into effect just recently, the April 14th. So what this did was around Thanksgiving, I mean, of course, like everyone's like, oh my goodness, what does this mean? But the FCC order really gave a lot of control to the wireless technology companies to be able to come in, locate, remove a lot of the barrier, the local barriers and control that the cities and towns and municipalities had to limit where they are, what they look like, how many there are, et cetera. So the two things that the regulation did say was you can create an application process and requirements for submittal, and the second thing you can do is enact design regulations. So one of the things we cannot do is deal with anything health related. It's really extremely narrow in terms of application, requirements for submittal, design. And that's the power that they gave us. That's the power we want to make sure we have. And that's really what, and I'll lay out kind of how we took a look at that in a minute. But just in general, for what's a small cell device? So everyone knows we have these big giant cell towers. They do a really good job at handling our phone calls. They do not do a really good job at handling all the data that's coming through, especially as, we're going from 3G, 4G, and then soon to be 5G. So what 5G is looking for is to be a lot more closer together, a lot closer to the actual, not this, but if it was a phone or a thing, the device that we use. Small cell wireless as defined by the FCC is this definition that I'm not going to read to you because it's really boring, but essentially it's a certain size, it's a certain height, and it's a certain amount of size for all of the equipment. And it can handle 4G and 5G. What we're seeing as the first kind of set of deployment, where they're going to be located, streetlights, utility poles, or standalone poles. There are a few building-mounted options as well, but you're seeing less of those kind of come through. We did I want to just show this picture. This picture was, we had Verizon come in. They wanted 7 sites. They came in before the FCC order. They actually withdrew their application, so we're hoping we can have another chance. But I wanted to give you an example of what they came in with. So this is the corner of Adams Street and Middlesex Turnpike. As you can see, kind of front. Does this have a pointer?
Did they provide comments to this, Kristen?
Yeah. They have a little bit. But anyway, so they wanted, oh, there we go. So this is a pole. They wanted to put this kind of antenna structure on the side of the pole. It's about the height of about 4 paper towel rolls. A lot of kind of on the pole, equipment up here, cabling to come down into a box that was going to be side mounted. No, I mean, not the best proposal by any stretch of the imagination. It wasn't the worst, but what we really wanted to take a look at is what is the worst and make sure we don't get it. So the size of small cell needs to be 28 square feet or less. This, if you look at this picture, this picture, they say 28 square feet is like a small small refrigerator. I think this one's probably a little bit bigger than 28 square feet, including this box. But anyway, no one wants this outside of their house. So, sorry, I'm jumping around. I talked about the takeaways. So what did we look at? We looked at options. Where are these going to be? Different options. Standalone poles, as I mentioned, street light on the side of a telephone pole, and then there's some in wires, but we haven't seen yet a proposal for that. But what do we want to be thinking about? The small cell committee back in November and, not November, January, February, March, and why I wanted to pass these two things out. These are the design regulations that have been adopted by the selectmen and the planning board. This is the application that has been adopted by the selectmen. So these two are extensive, these two are not what you're voting on. In the bylaw, these have already been accepted as policy, both from the selectmen as well as the planning board. What you are voting on in the general and zoning bylaw is the teeth for the power to enforce these regulations. And that's what, in essence, this bylaw is about. In order for us to mandate concealment, so we're not having just wires staple gun to the pole, that they're concealed within either a light pole system, or if it's on a telephone pole, there's a concealment measures, that they're not just like putting boxes on the side of the poles that are not somehow camouflaged. We can't mandate that things are underground. We can prefer they're underground, but also we want to make sure they're outside of the travel way. So if there's a pole on a sidewalk, we have enough poles in the middle of sidewalks that we're not having another giant piece of equipment also right in the middle of the sidewalk. So things like that in this version. So what the goal is, if I can go to the next slide. Anyway. Is to really guide companies when they come in to our desires. If you look at this first sheet, and this is what, if any of you that might have this in front of you, there's an X with the one that's kind of just like on the side of the pole, and then there's a street light integrated within the pole. So, I mean, as 5G is, 5G is coming down, it will be a thing. A lot of the companies are really trying to race to install these equipment, so as the new technology rolls out, it can be used. Burlington, we have had a lot of interest by a lot of the carriers, so I do think we're gonna start seeing things rolling out pretty quickly. Just like Verizon, I said, had withdrawn, but they're hot on our heels to resubmit and kind of looking at this zoning bylaw to see what we're gonna do. I know there's probably 100 million questions about 5G and small cell. We also have those 100 million questions. We recognize that we don't know everything. We recognize that there's gonna be a better way and new technologies and new ways to conceal all of this stuff on all our poles. And what we've just been telling people is, there's a really narrow window of control that we can have under this FCC guideline. Let's try to make sure we have it and do the best we can so we can roll this out more in this manner that you see on the screen versus some of the other techniques that we've seen. And let's learn along the way. I mean, over the next year, we're going to learn a lot more. We're going to learn a lot of what other people are doing. There isn't another city and town in Massachusetts that have adopted these regulations yet. Everybody's been kind of, I actually have had so many people call, and I've just sent them these, and I'm sure you're gonna see like city of, town of, and just like on the, like, okay, here, this is good, okay, for now. But anyway, we're gonna learn a lot, and I urge everyone to just, vote to approve this zoning bylaw as well as the general bylaw, so we at least can get the teeth, so we can get, as this rolls out, we can have as much control over our landscapes as possible. So that's it. Questions? Anyone have any comments?
The zoning bylaw review committee voted unanimously in favor of this.
Thank you. And the planning board also voted unanimously in favor. Yes.
Control is a good thing, and this question might be premature, but do we have any, so basically, the reason I say control is a good thing is we do want to control our space, and we do want to have a say over what happens here. Any clue whatsoever as to how many units they would want to put in here?
The industry standard, as that we've been learning, is that as close as 100 feet away from each other. And a
Okay.
point of reference is that the required frontage in Burlington is 100 feet. So for the average single-family house, the 100 feet of frontage is your 100 feet, then there's the next 100 feet. We have put regulations in place that each carrier can't be that close to each other, and they can be, I think it's 500 feet in the application, from one another at this point in time. We may want to look at that again. One of the other challenges is each carrier wants its own equipment. So you're talking about, Sprint and Verizon and AT&T all needing the same.
I'm a former telecom person, so,
Yeah,
I mean,
so
the
you
thing,
know.
they're all gonna want their proprietary stuff, and they don't want anybody piggybacking on the networks and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so that's a challenge, and hopefully that'll evolve over the next couple of years. We'll figure it out. But I mean, this is the potential of the massive amount of installations in a town like Burlington, especially with the amount of communication and places we have that have a high density, like the Burlington Mall, like Leahy Clinic, they want the signal strength to be very strong in a lot of our areas. So, I mean, that was it was kind of just like this red flag of emergency of, oh my goodness, we need to figure this out. We realize it's a really narrow window of control, but let's try to take it, let's try to figure it out, and let's move on. And Brenda's been on the committee since the beginning, and I think she can, certainly, if you want to have anything to say about the process and where we are.
No, I think we've done a good job, it's always gonna be a continual, dedicated effort, but I think from, what we're given, our ability to control what we can control, I think this is a definite good step in the right direction. Where they're talking about being in every 100 feet, basically, what they're looking for is if you're in your car, and you had an automated driving car, that's what your 5G is going to be, controlling. So they want, clear, consistent, coverage.
Yeah, there's no blips in coverage when you're on your self-driving car.
Yeah, exactly. You need to make that right turn. So that's the goal.
So that's it. And I'm sure this will be an ongoing conversation for a while, but we just want to make sure we have something in place.
Sally? I do have a question, and in one of the prior slides.
Usually the planning board says that.
Right, I forget we're on TV. In one of your plannings, in one of your prior slides, there was a picture with that one.
Yeah.
So could they put a box of some sort on the wires? And if you drive around, you'll sometimes see a box on the wires like those. And was that an option, or must they be affixed to a pole?
All I can tell you is I know it's an industry option, but it would need to be approved in the same way that everything else would, and that would not be something that we would prefer.
Okay, but you may not have a choice.
I think you want it, I think our desire is to have it concealed. Plus,
Right.
depending on what, the fiber, copper, that's expensive, people steal that stuff. You want to make sure that that's concealed.
Under the regulations, the strand mount would be very difficult to build.
Okay.
So, at least what we have so far. But as I mentioned, I mean, we're just trying to keep up to pace with a really fast-growing technology. So, but as Brenda mentioned, the regulations require concealment, and that's not concealed, so.
Okay, and ideally, we would want them on the light posts and not on all of the telephone poles, the wooden poles.
I mean, I think the light posts, I think we've seen the best integration of the systems, because the light pole companies are getting into this business of, oh, okay, I can sell a light pole and I can put this in there and I've integrated the whole thing and it looks great. Whereas the light pole, the utility pole, you're still adding something to something that's already there. So, I mean, I think you're gonna see both. Verizon owns all our telephone poles, and I mean, I think you're gonna see, you're definitely gonna see telephone pole mounted. It's just how do they conceal the equipment in that mount?
Okay, and boxes that the squirrels won't jump into
I hope so.
and fry themselves. They do that.
I don't have that in the regulations, but. Any other questions?
Yeah, just one more.
Yeah.
So I think I heard you say that we have no say over health, correct?
According to the FCC guidelines,
Okay.
that is true. You
So-
have to, you do have say in terms of, I'm sorry, you don't have say, but they would refer to you any of the federal tests and, limits that have already been set. So if it is something over that, then they wouldn't be allowed, but we can't put our own
All right,
limits
thank
for
you.
anything. But we do, if you look at, the application, there is a huge amount of data that we do want to collect as part of this, so we at least, even though we can't regulate it, we can at least really start having a data inventory of, what their RF frequency is gonna be, what, just if you look on page 3, the total outputs and kind of length of output, and just, I'm not a wireless engineer, so
No,
I'm not
right, but
using
there,
his
well,
vocabulary
the reason I
very well,
asked the question is because there are emissions, and if, and so if you're gonna have all these units, I'm just curious as to the aggregate effect, so.
Right, and so are we. And we know that we can't regulate it today, but if something changes later, we want to know from at least the applicant when they're coming in for the permit, what are those numbers? So if something does change, then at least we'll know what they came in with, so.
Thank you again.
Good.
Thank you. This
That
was-
was easy. Boy, a zoning meeting that doesn't take all night. We're good, huh? Well, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you spending a couple hours here. And you're welcome to stay around and ask any other questions. Otherwise, maybe I'll see some of you on Wednesday.
Two things, if you're interested, that don't have to do with town meeting, but are, on the planning board website, we post all of the applications under review. They're all the site plan, all the information, right off our website. And the second thing is we have, online GIS off our website that you can get information about all your property and links to the property record card. It looks at all the data layers and zoning layers, and I just want to let you guys know if you're ever looking for information.
Yeah, if you want
There's a
to,
lot of
I'll
stuff
just
on our
pull it up
website.
on the computer. It really is, that they've done a great job in planning in terms of getting the maps on GIS, and there's a lot of stuff. There's even my election stuff in terms of what precinct you're in and that kind of thing. So it's really a robust system. Thank you again.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
I have all the office due one house on Tuesday and another one on Wednesday, so.
person I want to introduce you to. Some of you may already know him, but our town moderator, since I use that title so much, Bill Byer is here, so he just popped in, and you can get a chance to say hi to him as well.
So there's lots of faces I don't recognize, so I'm assuming there's a whole lot of new town meeting members.
Yeah, I think,
Names I don't know, so I just call them you, or whatever. I'll work on the names later, but welcome. I assume Amy's clued you in on how the meetings run, and so just do whatever I busted say, you got it?
good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, it depends on where I'm at, the yard sale.